Hi everybody, welcome back to another reading video. I have no plan for this one. I'm just gonna shuffle some cards and see what wants to come out. So, yeah, as always with these videos, use your discernment. Not every video is for everyone, and there might be bits and pieces in here that resonate for you, or there might not be, or you might resonate with all of it, or none of it. So, you'll know what's up, but, yeah, okay. The first card that's coming out is the Knight of Wands. I was drawn to that one. There's an excited energy there. Doesn't mean that you are necessarily excited right now, but, okay, what wants to be said? Whenever I pull this placeholder card, I always read it as the period at the end of a sentence, or as a energetic pause, or like emphasis. So yeah, there's a grounded energy that always comes with that one for me. And then these two fell out upside down, the Eight of Swords upside down and the Two of Swords. Okay, so it looks like you have recently paused some kind of chaos. You were maybe overthinking or short-circuiting with your energy in some way, and it really created these mental loops in your mind. Where else would a mental loop be other than your mind? Yeah, you're reflecting or finding clarity on something that stirred up your mind quite a bit. And you know actually what this is just reminding me of? This is how tarot readings work. I pull cards, I get in touch with the themes, and I'm like, oh, I know this because I also experience it. So Knight of Wands, there's this energy of, being kind of a go-getter, someone excited to pursue life passionately with zeal. And the emphasis is just like, this is like you're focused, you're concentrated, you're in love with life, you're in pursuit of what you love, and really you're just being yourself, you're shining, you're vibrant. And after that Knight of Wands energy lulls and you come back down from that high, there's this short-circuiting, overthinking, maybe self-doubt, maybe contemplation, just this mental, I'm just seeing like crosshatches. What I'm seeing is literally a chain link fence, how, they're all diamonds. The like metal wires are all diamonds, and all of the angles of the diamonds are holding like this. So you try to stretch it apart, but it's also reinforced that you can't. You could untangle it and unweave it if you wanted to, but you would need special tools, you would need time, you would need strong joints, you would need dexterity, you would need whatever you would need. It's not something like a hair that fell out of your head that you can just see and then pull away and shed, unless your hair is a rat's nest or dreaded, which is a different situation, but that's not what I'm talking about. So yeah, this is the initial story that's coming out. It's this arc from passionate, outward, vibrant, burning movement to a pause, to reflecting on anxiety, on your own anxieties and on your own doubts. Could be doubts, doesn't have to be doubts, but Two of Swords, contemplation kind of energy. All right, what else wants to come through here? Three of Swords. Some of you are feeling heartbroken or in pain, or now that things have slowed down, you're feeling emotionally tender. And it could also be, I made this analogy the other day, we are vessels, period. You can look at that literally or metaphorically. Sorry, I came from the barn, so I think I have dust in my eye. Just fell in there. I'm a little mucky still. We are vessels. You can look at that literally or metaphorically. Okay, so literally, we're hollow tubes. We're full of tubes. Our bones are tubes that contain marrow. Our blood vessels and capillaries are tubes that transport oxygen and nutrients and warmth and vitality throughout our flesh. They nurture our muscles, they nurture our organs. They're tubes. Our digestive tracts and our throats, our mouths, our voices, our olfactory sense, they're there partly because of tubes. You eat food and it goes in and it swirls around and then it moves and digests and changes form, and the nutrients are extracted. Yes, honey. Come. You want to be a part? She wants me to pet her while she rubs her face against a backpack that's in the corner because that's her little place to hang out. I feel like she's a machine gun. Oh, she's not a machine gun. I just think it's so funny. This is how she wants to hang out. She likes having her arms supported. What a good girl. What a graceful jumper. This is Butter if you haven't met Butter yet. Right, so we're tubes, okay? And emotionally, we metabolize emotions similarly in tube form. What do I mean when I say that? Well, emotions are chemicals. Oh, hello, sweet love. They are physiologically, microscopically shaped different from other emotions. And those shapes are received by different transmitters. I don't know enough about transmitters specifically to name which kinds can receive which chemicals, but that sort of communication and transference is very tube-like. It's very step one, step two, step three. It's very indicative and reflective of the fact that we are tubes, that these things flow through. You look at an image of I think axons in the brain, very, very, I don't know if it's microscopic or smaller, but the electrical transmitters and receivers that receive electrical impulses that travel through these wires in our brain. We are conduits. That's why if we are in water while it gets struck by lightning, we're gonna zap, I wish that upon nobody. That's why if we take a bath and we drop a hairdryer in the bathtub, that's awful to think about, but we're gonna also get zapped because we're conduits. It's just so simple. So when heat, when passion, when raw life force, vital energy, Knight of Wands, moves, the knight is in motion. Look at him galloping on his horse with the flames. The Knight of Wands, he travels with his heat. He is moved by the flames. The Knight of Wands is also read as potentially impulsive, right? Because fire crackles. Fire, we don't have enough frames per second of visual processing in our eyes, I think, for the most part, to register all of the, the micro movements in fire. It's like when you're sitting in front of a bonfire and you pour butane, per se, or gasoline on the fire, or you light up gasoline. It's like, or you throw something in there that's explosive. What if you threw a lighter in the fire? It would just explode before your eyes. Your eyes don't even have enough time to process that. I'm just trying to drive in the point that this fire energy and the electricity that courses through our bodies and our nervous systems is too quick to really sustain forever. Because if a fire kept on burning it would eat everything. It would eat the whole world. That's why a fire is only sustained by as much fuel as is available for it to burn. And then there are other things, other factors, like the temperature, or the stone barrier of a fire pit to keep the fire from spreading, or like moist water in the ground around the dry patch that you're burning the fire on. There are conditions within which the fire can sustain itself, but we don't live in a world where fire can burn 24/7 everywhere all the time. And that's why, part of the reason why the Knight of Wands is read as impulsive, because it's quick, it's short-lived. When you throw a lighter into a flame, into a fire pit, it explodes, it burns, and then it's done burning. And that's the nature of fire. There needs to be so much momentum and energy collected in one place and then fed okay, I'm going to start over. There needs to be so much energy collected into one place, in that, imagine rubbing sticks together and you're creating friction and heat in that one place, or you have a magnifying glass and the sun and light is coming through and you're angling it so that it's creating a pinpoint on a piece of paper and you can burn it. That energy needs some time to collect, and then when the chemical conditions are perfect, fire. And then as soon as water comes, the fire dies. So fire, the nature of fire is sporadic, it's spontaneous. That's why in astrology, when we think of fire signs, we think bold, we think boisterous, we think warm, visible, leaders, also affectionate. They're so warm. The energy of a fiery kind of person, there's warmth, there's generosity, there's abundance, there's enough to go around, because the fire burns so bright and it's not reserved with its heat. The fire is as hot. Well, I know there are different kind of temperatures that fire can get. I don't know too much about the chemistry of that, but in general, I think that, the fire on the, opening of your lighter is as hot as the fire in the fire pit. And then, of course, there might be some, slight fluctuations in temperature, but fire is fire, right? Like, just like the freezing point of water is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Fire is as hot as fire is going to get. I don't know why I went on that tangent. So anyway, we've established the fire phenomenon, right? Okay, and then we also established the tube phenomenon. Because we cannot sustain, metaphorically, the same way that the world cannot be on fire 24/7. Thank God. It would be a very different world. I mean, the sun is on fire 24/7, but eventually it's going to burn out. But it's got a ton of fuel, enough to sustain our lives for God knows how many years to come. Millions more years? Hundreds of millions? I don't actually know the lifespan of the sun, but it's a long, long, long time, supposedly. So, in our lives, fire is synonymous with, again, like I said, joy, warmth, affection, enthusiasm, loudness, boisterous, elevation, zeal, passion, anger. And our bodies process the emotional chemistry of those different emotions, joy, anger, fiery type emotions. And they flow through our bodies in different ways, through tears, through screaming, through breathing, through tensing, through different ways. And that, you could say, is just a snapshot of how the spiritual element of fire physically manifests and moves through our flesh. So when you have a flame, when you have deep, deep, deep passion, when you are walking through the world with excitement, with this Knight of Wands energy, what happens to our tubes? Think about it. Maybe they need to be soothed by water afterwards. when a crystalline emotional chemical is purified, cried out of our bodies, or sweat out of our bodies, or excreted, or breathed out, or worked out, whatever, it can leave the system feeling a little raw, feeling a little depleted, right? Because we use electrolytes, we use minerals, we use calories, we use energy to process emotions. And it's just part of what we burn through on a daily basis. The body is kind of like hot coals, and that's why we need to eat and drink every day, because we need to keep the gears lubricated. We need to keep the nutrients, the minerals coming through so that we can sustain the fire. So here's what this card spread is showing, which I'm like, of course this is the story, because this is what I'm experiencing in my life right now. When you have that burst, you know, this is so symbolic. The swords represent air. When you have that fire burst rush through your tubes in your body, air elements, swords, they become depleted, because what does air do to fire? It feeds it. So this is energy being used upright. This is air energy upright being used. When the fire comes in and burns it out, there's no more air. So you kind of sit back and you go, oh, wow, okay, well, I can't even sustain anxiety anymore, because I have no energy to be anxious, because my fire burned through it all. So, I'm maybe a little depleted, and that's painful. That's actually painful. There's a grief in that, because there's an emptiness, and there's this feeling of like being singed on the inside. So, as I was saying, when that fire kind of burns through your system, maybe you need cooling, maybe you need soothing, and maybe you're feeling how all of that energy moved through your vessel and maybe scraped up or singed or frayed some of the tubes on the way through. I hope you're with my analogy right now. I think I'm doing a fine job. So yeah, if you're feeling tender, so this reading is just basically saying you might be feeling sensitive or tender after a really passionate day or a passionate moment. That's exactly what this spread is saying. And it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. It just means, your body is signaling that you're depleted. And that happens. We deplete our resources. That's why we, have to go to the grocery store to refill our refrigerators, because we have to keep cooking meals. We can't just not eat for the rest of our lives. The body can't survive without food some bodies are better than others. I know monks and maybe some people in those lineages have more, reserves or genetic variations that support them fasting for like weeks at a time, because we all know that these prophets have done that, and I'm not advocating that or saying it's a good thing. I'm just saying, whatever, there's only we can't go 5 years without eating or drinking. 5 years without food or water, I don't think that's possible. I've never heard of that happening, although I have heard of this man who got lost at sea, and he didn't eat for like months. He was lost at sea for months, and I don't know how much he drank, if he drank at all, but he survived. So there are, miracles like that. There's lots of mysteries and things that we don't understand, and lots of patterns that are very rare and unique. But in general, the pattern with human beings is that we'll die if we don't eat or drink after a certain period of time, for the most part in general. And then again, there's always miracles. So yeah, okay, next I'm going to ask, what is the path to restoration? Doing these readings grounds me so much. Okay, Page of Cups and Ace of Swords. So this is saying that This is telling you to follow your heart and you'll find clarity. That's just what I see. Follow your heart and you're going to find clarity. Even if following your heart means acknowledging what you feel, even if it's not a comfortable or a pleasant feeling, it's just the fact is that you're emotionally connected. When you feel anger and you repress it or run from it or hide from it or deny it, that can create toxicity. But when you feel anger and you acknowledge it, you own it, and you have a relationship with anger, an honest one, that creates intimacy. That would be the Page of Cups. So this is saying be honest. It's not saying be soft. It's not saying be gentle. It's not saying force yourself to feel peace. It's not saying feel this watery, romantic, poetic energy. It's saying be honest and be intimate with your emotions, and that's exactly where clarity is going to come. The instant that you actually acknowledge, I feel like shit, I'm so heartbroken right now, or whatever it is that you feel, the instant, that brings connection, that brings intimacy, that brings clarity. And if you think of, what a child needs when they're crying, when they're distraught, when the child is crying because they cut their finger, for example, they got a paper cut, and the mother comes over and she soothes the child and kisses their boo-boo and dresses their wound and tends them. That's intimacy, that's connection, that's emotional nourishment, that's emotional visibility, that's the Page of Cups, that's intimacy and love driving toward what's real and what's emotionally moving. It doesn't have to be positive. I'm not telling you to feel good, and I'm not telling you how to feel better. I'm telling you how to feel connected and how to find your center in the middle of whatever it is that you're going through. I'm not an advocate for necessarily, it's like my priority is not feeling better, it's feeling connected. Because feeling better is a byproduct of feeling connected. I feel better from my pain when I'm understood, when I'm seen, when I'm cared for, when I'm validated. I don't feel better when someone sees me and thinks that something is wrong because I'm in pain and they need to fix me. And I think for a lot of people it is instinctual and natural to want to prevent a person from feeling pain and feeling harm, and all this stuff is just, it's very nuanced, and I just wanted to name that. But the way that I'm reading it and the type of person I am, this is saying, when you don't rush to fix what's there and you can just be intimate with it and love it the way that a mother would hold a child. A mother doesn't shake the child and say, why don't you shut up? It's like when you have a toy or something and the batteries are running out and the toy makes noise when the batteries work fine, but when the batteries are draining it starts to short circuit and glitch, and it's it gets weird. Just imagine that, and imagine getting frustrated at this thing because it's not working and you're shaking it and smacking it or whatever. That's a very different energy from meeting a living, breathing human being or a creature who is experiencing, an ailing state, and just kind of being with them. Because when we know how to be present, we can be attuned to what those creatures need. And sometimes we're so skilled in a certain area of life that we can just see a situation and respond to it without even thinking. And other people might need to take more time to understand or comprehend a certain emotional texture of a situation. That's a side tangent, but it's actually really important. And I'm thinking about an EMT, for example. If you're new to the EMT world and you're in training, learning how to respond to an emergency, you're not going to take as short of a time as a seasoned EMT who has been responding to trauma for 50 years, who's just a natural emotional saint type of person who was just born to respond to tragedies and traumas. Someone who's interested and wants to learn the skills of care and nourishment and emergency trauma response. It's going to take them more learning and more time and more processing and more metabolic processing, emotional processing to become adept at responding. So I think that's deeply important to say, because sometimes everyone has a different relationship to their emotions, and everyone processes differently, and sometimes some people need to actually take a step back from their emotions to protect their nervous systems, because they don't actually have the capacity to feel or carry or hold the depth and weight of maybe what, a more sensitive person does. And I've run into that kind of my whole entire life, because I'm very sensitive, and I find that I have more of an emotional capacity to actually hold the discomfort and be present with the discomfort without running away from it or without shutting down, as most people. I'm just being honest, that's my experience. And I think my channel finds people who are similar, or similarly oriented or whatever. So how to restore this feeling, how to come back to your center. For this reading, the instructions are: create emotional intimacy with yourself. Just witness. That's it. Okay, are there any final messages? Temperance, yes. Okay. Patience, gentleness. Okay, temperance, you're going to have to repeat yourself. You're going to have to repeat this process, and you're going to have to be patient when you are going through the motions, going through the waves of trying to just, ride out the pain, ride out the discomfort, ride out the changes and the shifts in your emotions. And temperance is reminding us to be gentle. And I know earlier in the video I was saying that I'm not telling you to be gentle or to be soft, because I was kind of emphasizing that I'm not telling you how to feel, but I'm, trying to show you that all the good stuff that we want, that we're upset that we don't have, the peace, the comfort, the ease, all that stuff is a byproduct of connection. And so softness can't be forced, but it's a byproduct of connection. That's what I meant to say. So temperance is saying your capacity for consistent connection is being stretched right now. And you're being invited into gentle, consistent connection with yourself. You're being invited into gentle, consistent connection with yourself. Temperance is a reminder that when we feel frustrated, let's ask ourselves, are we resisting the fact that we feel uncomfortable, or are we brave and tempered and loving enough to feel this divine motherly love coming over us, even though we feel sad or hurt or uncomfortable? That's what temperance is. Temperance is like the unmoving core of our beings. Temperance is the part of ourselves that is still. Temperance is the part of ourselves that says, "Come as you are, my child." Temperance is the part of ourselves that regulates our nervous systems back to a state of the original peace that we all came from before all of these concepts and before the ego muddled everything up. That's just part of being human. Temperance is the internal anchor that all humans have, and every human has a different need or pattern or way that they find their way back to temperance, but it's what every human has inside of them that says, I've got you, you're secure, I'm here, we're healing. I see your goals, I see your ambitions, I see your directions, and I am responsible for holding your hand one step at a time. And my love, when we get to the thorny parts, I will still hold your hand and we will walk over the thorns one step at a time. And when we get to the muddy parts, we will walk through the mud one step at a time. Temperance is the faculty that makes surfers able to learn how to surf these waves. Instead of being swallowed up by the waves, they learn to ride them. Temperance says in order to surf a swell, you need a board. In order to surf on a board, you need balance, you need practice, you need wetsuit, you need to regulate your temperature. Temperance says in order to shoot a bow and arrow, you need to have finger strength. Temperance says in order to run, you need to walk. Temperance is the thing that, without even realizing it, the baby that takes its first steps and then tries running for the first time and falls, temperance is the thing in the baby that picks the baby back up with joy, with pure joy. There's no shame. There's no humiliation. There's no knocking you down. There's just enthusiasm. There's just joy. There's just raw, pure creativity from temperance that says, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it. Don't even tell yourself you made a mistake, because we're human and we're not perfect. And temperance is here to be by your side when you're learning to do a new thing or learning to sustain a new state in your nervous system. And going back to the beginning of this reading, Knight of Wands, I mean, raw life force, vitality, fire, passion. In life, when we are learning new things and learning how to sustain more joy and receive more joy in our lives, that stretches our nervous systems. And every single time we receive a blessing that we've never felt before or never whatever, our egos are going to almost retract or snap back and create this contraction in us, the way that a rubber band does or a bowstring does when you pull it back and release, and then it contracts again. The same thing happens with our egos, and that's why when you burn really, really, really bright and you feel so happy that you don't even remember anything bad in that moment, when you have that experience, that's why it's painful afterwards. For a lot of the time, especially for a lot of sensitive people whose nervous systems are conditioned to expect, loss or bad things or whatever. I honestly don't know if every human being is like that, but I think everyone has a different relationship to expansion and contraction, but I do think the core of my message here is about expansion and contraction. This spread is saying that you were just so expanded. You just had all this heat, could be literal inflammation, or, heat is literally molecules moving fast and being more spread apart. But cold is when the molecules are closer together and they're slower. And so heat, when you're excited, when you're heated up with passion and connection and all this stuff, the molecules, the energy, the quantum material, the particles in your field, in your flesh, they have to kind of slow back down and become more still. And that creates this sense of coldness, right? What happens when you suck out all of the air in a space and you have a void? Instead of air being available, aka upright, it becomes a void. So the fire and air, fire eats up all the air, and now there's no air, and it's a void. That's like literally what these cards are saying. So when you have that, it's uncomfortable, it's painful, and that's why when astronauts go to outer space, they need to be in temperature regulated suits, because I think it's like negative 300 something or 200 something Fahrenheit in space. Like, you would just freeze, like instantly. You would die. It's way too cold because there's no air. So yeah, temperance. Temperance is saying, and it's kind of like, temperance is also a reminder that our emotional temperature, we should expect it to be a little uncomfortable after huge expansion. Like after we receive a blessing or after we give birth, the body goes into labor and it births, and there's ecstasy and bonding with the baby. And then after the birth, the mother is recovering. So she doesn't have energy to walk around and do things for herself the same way that she did maybe when she was slowly growing a baby inside of her womb, you know? Or like, temperance is kind of like you train for a soccer game and then you go play and you have a successful game, whatever that means to you, and you enjoy it and you score goals and you grow as a team or whatever. And then you have to eat something afterwards and you have to like rest afterwards. You're not going to like play like 5 games in a row. I mean, some people do that, but you need to sleep at some point, is what temperance is saying. Temperance is saying that even with this passion, even with this bigness, whatever it is for you, whatever it is for your life, I'm making all these analogies so that you can actually get this. You can feel it, because I want you to feel it. I want you to feel that you're actually okay and that you don't need to be anxious. You don't need to be worried. You don't need to be meta uncomfortable on top of the discomfort of coming back, contracting after a burst of life. Because I find that a lot of the time, in my experience, it can be confusing and kind of scary when, trying to understand my emotions when I experience something big and brilliant, but then the next day I'm like, why do I feel so tender? Why do I feel so prickly? Why do I feel like crap? But it's just contraction. It's just things coming together, and it feels cramped. And that's when things like a cup of tea or my cat or like fuzzy pants or like quiet can come and soothe and hold space for the contraction. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's okay. And that's why, mothers who give birth hopefully have a village or a supportive partner to take care of them after they give birth, but because they can't take care of them and it takes a village to raise a child. And it takes support around the house to help raise a baby. Mom can't hold baby all the time because mom has to take a shower, she has to use the bathroom, and she has to spend time for herself sometimes. So that's temperance. And also, from another metaphorical standpoint on the temperature analogies and the fire and ice and water, temperance says, if you want to boil water in Antarctica, you need to put the ice in a pot. You need to put the hot water in a pot and make a fire and wait for the water to reach temperature, boiling temperature. That's what temperance says. Temperance says it is not physically possible to boil water under a little baby fire in 2 seconds. Unless you have some like super crazy chemically altered fire that can reach insane temperatures and turn the water into boiling water in 2 seconds. I don't know about that. I'm just thinking about regular fire the way that I know it. I think there's always exceptions to every rule for the most part, and I don't like making generalizations because, I don't know, life is mysterious and miraculous and I don't know everything, but in general, you know what I'm saying. Temperance is saying, when you want to eat your ice cream and you take it out of the freezer, you kind of need to let it soften a little bit before you scoop it, especially if you have a really, really cold freezer. Because if it comes out the freezer and it's too frozen solid, you're not going to be able to scoop it. So that's what temperance is saying. So that is what I have for you, my friends. Please leave a comment if this resonated at all. And I'm always so pleasantly surprised with these readings because they always are just talking directly to the themes and the patterns that I'm also internally walking through at any given moment. So that's that. And lastly, if you want to book a personal reading with me, I do offer them. The information for what I have available is in the description of this video. So if you're interested, send me a message here on YouTube or on Instagram at Rustic Peach, and we can book something. And that is all I got for today. I'll see you next time.